Hi guys, Buildzoid here, and today I want to talk a little bit about sort of choosing motherboards and sort of why I do my PCB breakdowns the way I do them. Because recently I saw a comment on Reddit which was complaining that apparently I don't give enough attention to things like the rear I/O of a motherboard. Obviously I focus mostly on like the VRM and the memory overclock, and then if I get a motherboard in hand, I try to cover the memory overclocking, maybe the VRM thermals if I feel like the VRM is sketchy on a sort of on paper basis. If on paper the VRM doesn't look that great, then it's like, okay, let's see if it actually, like if the heatsink makes up for it or not. That kind of thing. And then, of course, I try to cover also memory overclocking. But I don't focus on things like rear I/O, networking, and a lot of those kinds of features. And my justification for that is basically is like if we go onto any motherboard vendor's website, which so here we are on MSI's website, right? If I want to know something about, let's say, this board, because the thing about a lot of the X570 boards is currently they do not have complete feature pages, right? So because they're not released yet, and they can't put out the specifications because that would violate some NDA or something. So anyway, let's go on to a Z390 board. So if I was doing my PCB breakdown of this board, I'd talk about the VRM, I'd talk about the memory topology, maybe the, maybe some overclocking features that I feel are worth highlighting, because that's kind of the focus of my channel and my coverage. But if you're looking for a motherboard and you're interested in buying it, then, one of the things you can do for any motherboard, instead of going to read some review, because most motherboard reviews out there just copy paste this page right here, you can just go and check out this page, right? You can see all of this. Then I guess they have more details over here, right? I would not necessarily trust the memory speeds that most motherboard vendors list. They tend to be a little bit generous, but not like, it's not always really bad, but sometimes it's a bit generous. Then, of course, if you go into support, like if you want a lot of extra detail, you can go as far as just downloading the motherboard manual and checking, through the feature list in the motherboard manual itself. So I guess let's we can do that, I guess. So yeah, bam, you can get the motherboard manual, and it's a zip file, which is great. No, there we go. Can I open it? Yes. Bam. See, there we have our motherboard manual, and you can just read through this to check if there's anything that the website missed. It'll probably be in the motherboard manual. So my view on motherboard reviews is that reviews should cover things that the manufacturer's own website doesn't. Okay, that's the whole point, is like the reviewer is there to add additional information that you can't just freaking go to like MSI's site. You can do the same for Asus, right? Here's the Crosshair 7 Hero. We can check out the specifications, right? You can get your storage support here, LAN, and if you want more details on like how the PCIe is laid out or something like that, that's what the motherboard manual is for. Right, because if we go back to the... Oh, I closed it. Good job, me. But if we go back to the motherboard manual, like you get your block diagram, which tells you how all the PCI... Like, all the expansion is configured, and basically all motherboard manuals will include something like this. Then if we go to DIMM slots, right... So it'll tell you what memory configuration is optimal for your setup. So this motherboard's a daisy chain, so they tell you DIMM B2, DIMM A2. Interestingly enough, Gigabyte's T topology doesn't actually have like a preferred set of DIMM slots. You can basically run whatever you feel like. Of course, there's channel restrictions, like A1, A2 are channel A, B2, B1, B2 are channel B, but T topology does not change that. The channels are still independent like that, but then you have your PCIe slots, and it even tells you what they're hooked up to. So like PCH, CPU, PCA, like anything you could possibly want to know about a motherboard, you can get from the manufacturer's website, except things like the VRM specifications, the BIOS, the BIOS experience, because well, they're not really gonna, there's no real way for them to put that on their site. So that's kind of why, and they're not going to tell you much about the VRM, right? Like, if you're lucky, they'll tell you that they have some number of phases, and they're not even very reliable in how they count that. So, that's kind of that. But so that's basically why when I do my PCB breakdowns, I don't cover the rear I/O, because if you want to know about the rear I/O, you can just check the manufacturer's website. Right? Like that's more effective. So what I try to cover is the things that the motherboard manufacturers don't talk about. Right? And so that's kind of the justification for the way I do my coverage. And then I guess I'll just put out some advice for, like, if you're buying a motherboard, then the criteria you have to kind of consider is, like, what are you going to be doing with the motherboard, right? Like, my daily system has a motherboard that, quite frankly, I don't consider a very good overclocking motherboard, but I don't really care because my daily system doesn't need to run at 100% maxed out on the CPU, and so I'm okay with running a motherboard that isn't necessarily that great. Also, because my daily system literally, like, it browses Reddit, it plays games, and it produces videos. So, and I don't do any, like, video rendering, so I don't really need a great motherboard. So, but basically, if you have some kind of criteria, right, it's just like, well, are you going to overclock? How much are you going to overclock? If you're doing a gaming build, right, and you're on Intel and you're not going to overclock, you can go with, like, a non-Z chipset board, and then it's like the VRM's irrelevant at that point, which is why I don't cover them, because they don't overclock. Right? So, and if you're on, like, if you're buying AMD boards, then it's like, well, how many cores are you going to have? Because that changes drastically how heavy the overclocks are going to get for the motherboard. But also, if you're not going to have, like, top-end water cooling and you're running let's say, the upcoming Ryzen 3000 series 12 core, right? If you don't have a potentially, like, a custom water cooling loop, there's a pretty good chance you're going to be thermally limited before your motherboard limited. So, you kind of need to consider that. Like, there's no point having a $600 or $500 or even $300 motherboard and then having an air cooler on the CPU. Like, if you're air cooling that CPU, you do not need a $300 motherboard. And by air cooling, I include AIOs, so all-in-one liquid coolers, the things like the Corsair H100. Those coolers aren't really that much better than large dual-tower air coolers in general. They just aren't. Because they don't have very high water flow rates. So, the whole advantage of big water cooling loops is that you have much stronger pumps, much larger radiators, and you can run more water through the water block that's colder than what you get in a normal AIO. And that's why custom water cooling is, like, if you're on, like, a 300, 400, 500 watt CPU, you pretty much need custom water cooling. But if you're on lower heat loads than that, dual tower air coolers and AIOs are pretty much the same thing. Depending on the specific CPU, you might find that some air coolers are actually better than some AIOs. But yeah, so it's like, like the motherboard, like, I focus heavily on the VRM because I do this channel for, people who actually care heavily about overclocking, and, you're going to be trying to push the limit of your memory, the limit of your CPU, the limit of all of those kinds of things, right? But if you're just doing, like, a daily gaming setup, you don't have to pay that much attention to it. Now, if you're doing, like, a video render farm, then, I'd argue you should, because the motherboard's going to be at, like, 100% load, or 3D rendering setup, right? You're going to be running the motherboard at 100% load. But at that point, it's also like, well, is your workstation going to really be pushing a top 1% overclock, or are you going to maybe go for something a little bit more mild and more stable? Now, admittedly, I know a guy who runs Minecraft servers, and he's come to the conclusion that the best way to run Minecraft servers with a lot of players on them, just because of how Minecraft is written, is overclocked, like, heavily overclocked 32 gig DDR4 kits, along with maxed out 9900Ks. And that's just kind of what they're running, because Java being Java, there's nothing that really gives them any better performance. A Xeon is great, except for the part where it's, like, super low clock speed. You can't run the memory that high. So, there are niche scenarios where you might be like, I want a top 1% overclocked server. There are scenarios where that might make sense, like I just described, but if you're doing, like, normal workstation stuff, I'd assume the CPU's at stock, in which case you can probably get away with like, if you're looking at a motherboard and your CPU's at stock, the VRM kind of becomes irrelevant unless you're looking at really bottom of the barrel boards. And even there, like, the main loss is going to be that the CPU might underclock itself when you start running it at full load. So, yeah, you know, so basically consider what you want from the motherboard first, and then kind of look for what you're building. Yeah, it's just like basically my content is not what I would consider relevant. Like if you're running a 9600K, right, in a gaming build, you don't need a top of the line motherboard. Even if you're maxing, like even if you're running that 9600K at like 5.2 gigahertz or something, you don't need a top of the line motherboard. It's a 9600K. It just doesn't pull that much power. Now, if you're running let's say a Ryzen 5 2600, which in my opinion is like the best bang for buck gaming CPU out there, if you're running a Ryzen 2600 overclocked, again, you don't need a top of the line motherboard. That CPU doesn't pull that much power if you actually overclock it within the sort of safe voltage ranges, which is up to around 1.37, 1.375, 1.38 volts. And in that case, again, you can get away with a strong four-phase VRM, which is why basically for X470 and B450, I think if you're buying just a casual gaming board, you should just look at motherboards from MSI. Now, it might be possible that, ASRock or Asus, or you need some kind of, I don't know, extra networking functionality or extra USB ports or something. And MSI, for a lot of the boards where I like the VRM on them, it's like, okay, they don't necessarily have that many USB ports, but you can decide for yourself in that department. It's like, well, I'm not going to be maxing out the VRM, so I can sacrifice some VRM build quality for extra USB ports, right? You can make compromises. Now, if you're buying a motherboard that's $500, you don't really have to worry about those kinds of compromises because they don't exist, right? It's just like you can just get everything. Arguably, with some of the top-end boards, you can really just go and buy everything on one board, and that's why they're so damn expensive. You don't have to make any sacrifices anywhere. So, yeah, like if we look at this MSI board right here, right? So, look at the rear I/O. For a lot of people, this would not be enough USB ports. In fact, even for me, I'd say this is not enough USB ports. So on the rear I/O, because I think I'd max this out just because I have like two webcams and an external sound card and then mouse, keyboard, that all goes into the rear I/O. So yeah, I think, yeah, I'd max out the USB ports, and it's like, well, I'd like to have the option that, have one more USB port on there. And yeah, and so that's that. So if we go back on MSI's website and look at some other boards, then on Z390, what else do they have? I assume that one has even less USB ports because that's technically ranked below the Carbon, isn't it? Yeah, that's actually the same rear I/O configuration, pretty much. Yeah, and it's worse. Well, there's other sacrifices made on the board, but let's see. 390 Tomahawk, I think that still keeps the same rear I/O. Actually, that's just restricted to Z390 boards. So if we look at the Z390 Ace, there we go. That's more like a rear I/O I would find acceptable. And so obviously MSI, they've decided that, hey, we're going to, for our lower end boards, we're not going to go for as much rear I/O. Now, if we look at something like the ASRock Z390 Extreme, and I go to some motherboard manufacturers have websites that make even me confused. Oh, there we go. There's our rear I/O. So we have the same configuration as MSI. So this honestly wouldn't be a better option. And this has if I'm not mistaken, the VRM on this might be worse. So in that case, it's like, okay, so I don't get any more rear I/O. I don't get a better VRM. Why would I choose this board over this board? I wouldn't. Okay. Like at this point, like you'd have to find something else that's a criteria for making your selection. Let's see. Z390 or no, I need to go by chipset. Z390. Now, honestly, if I was choosing a motherboard for my personal computer, I'd be looking at X470 boards or B450 boards, not Z390s, because I don't need a 9900K in my daily system. So, because as I said, I don't play games, so why would I spend so much money on the top of the line gaming CPU? So, I wonder what the I/O on the Elite looks like. Oh, see, that's better. Yeah, see, this is more up my alley. So we have 4 USB, yeah, just a bunch of USB. Admittedly, there's no Type C, and for somebody else that might be a deal breaker. For me, it isn't. I have like the only Type C device I have is my phone. So for me, the lack of USB Type C anywhere on the rear I/O is just completely irrelevant. Then I'd also maybe check like what kind of I/O options you have internally from the motherboard. I use two USB 3.0 connect like internal connectors for my daily system because I have like a USB like I have a 5 1/4 SD card reader with a bunch of USB ports on it. So yeah, there's only one USB 3.0 on this board. It's right there, right? I can actually, if I'm not sure that I'm missing something on the photo, right? Remember, there's the motherboard manual. You can always go and check the motherboard manual if you're missing something, but also maybe the specification chart, which USB chipset. Back panel, 6x USB 3.1 Gen 1 ports, 4 ports on the back panel, 2 ports available through the internal USB header. Yeah, but I need 2 separate internal headers, right? So, yeah, that's not useful. And then we have a bunch available through 3.1. I must have missed it in the photo then. So in this case, it would be a really good idea to go to the support part, download the motherboard manual. I didn't realize this would actually end up being a gigabyte advertisement, but I'm sorry. Like, this is actually the part. Like, this is basically why my current motherboard is a gigabyte board. Is just like I was like, well, I need 2 USB 3.0 internal ports, and I need a certain amount of rear I/O USB ports, and I also wanted Intel 1G LAN just because taking recommendations for LAN chips for me is not a good idea because I am definitely not qualified. It's just that my experience is that Intel LAN just works. So I just stick to Intel LAN chips. That doesn't mean all the other ones are bad. It's just that I don't know. And you know, since I don't want to bother reading a bunch of reviews about who makes the best LAN controller, I'm just going to stick to the Intel ones because I've not had problems with them. Whereas I've had some negative experiences with like Realtek controllers. So you know, that makes me pretty biased. Okay, and this I don't even have to properly download it. That's nice. If we go through here, yeah, so we have our front panel USB there. And no, I didn't miss one. So this motherboard, again, just doesn't have an internal USB 3.0, like 2 USB 3.0 internal headers. So yeah, that's potentially a reason for me to go look at a more high-end board. So that's the Elite, right? Yeah, so that's the Elite. I wonder if the Pro goes up to it. And you have the Wi-Fi option. Actually, the non-Wi-Fi option is probably cheaper. So let's go to the non-Wi-Fi option because we're cheap. Right? Like, you want to buy a motherboard that basically has all of your minimum requirements. There's no reason, if you're trying to save budget, just make a list of things you want, like how many USB ports, what kind of overclocking you want to do, how much RAM you want to run, what kind of frequency you want to run on the RAM, because again, like that'll change it, like that'll potentially change which motherboard you can go for. What kind of BIOS you're willing to tolerate. I'm willing to tolerate basically any BIOS. I think ASRock is the only board vendor where it's like, I'd be reluctant to buy their board because of their BIOS. But even then, it's just, if the board is a good enough deal, then I'd go even for a freaking ASRock, okay? Like, and actually, I gotta say, on Z390, I like their BIOS a lot. I'm actually really impressed with their Z390 BIOS. It's the AMD BIOS that I think that they have an absolute freaking catastrophe. Like, their AMD BIOS is an absolute disaster, if you ask me. But, nope, still just one internal 3.0. Which isn't really that surprising. So if we go back, so I guess I'd have to go for the Ultra, right? Like, there's got to be one with enough USB ports for me, right? Actually, Asus might have some decent options as well. Now, I think Asus's website is by far the worst motherboard manufacturer website because what the hell is this? So yeah, I am not impressed. So, but if you go here and then you uncheck that, and then let's go Z390. I've just decided that we're going to go through Z390 boards because they're the most modern. So, and like the unfortunate thing is they don't list the price points here, but you know, I would have a store page open at the same time as I'm choosing my motherboard, so I'd have a quick reference of roughly where the prices are at. as I'm going through the motherboards from each of the manufacturers. So I think the Strix F is like roughly the price range of the like Ultra from Gigabyte, and well, the Z390 Extreme might be the cheapest board so far. So we have one USB 3.0 down there. And yeah, I think this would be a no for me as well. Wouldn't it? Let's see. Also, the rear I/O. Yeah, this is like almost the same as MSI's, isn't it? Okay, no, it has a couple more USB ports. So it's not quite as barren, but it's still nowhere near what the Gigabyte board had, is it? Oh no, this one's worse. Wait, what did they? No, it's not. I just missed these two because they're black. I'm like, oh, there's those ports, but no. So yeah, but the internal USB 3.0, and why is this so small? Oh, well, whatever, right? So this doesn't seem to have the, I mean, we can go through the specifications and USB ports. 2-up back panel. I don't know why Firefox sometimes does that, but 2 on the back. Wait, why are we on the Hero? Oh. Oops. Specifications. Okay, so 2.0, 4 at midboard. I hate how it's USB 3.1 Gen 1 and 3.1 Gen 2. Like, that is so stupid. It should just be called 3.0. But anyway. 2 at midboard. Wait, that is Gen 1, right? Yeah, that is. Where is it? And at this point, it would be a good idea to, again, just download the motherboard manual. So that's normally what you end up with, is just download the manual, because it normally has better details than the websites for whatever reason. You'd think that wouldn't be so hard, but oh my god, Asus, why? Why is there so much crap? Nope, that's RAID. English motherboard manual. Perfect. Motherboard overview. Okay, so that's a USB 3.0. And I'm not seeing the other one. So, yeah. Again, like at this point, conclusion is motherboard not for me. So, yeah, and admittedly, if you go through like my motherboard choosing process, you're going to be choosing a motherboard for ages and ages and ages. But at the end of the process, you will hopefully have a motherboard that's just right for you. And you're not going to run into something where it's like, wait a minute, I thought this was there and it isn't. So, yeah, hopefully this is somewhat helpful. And one of the things, like, with this Z390-F gaming, like, this board is actually weaker on the VRM, but I'm not sure that the VRM is that much worse than what they have on the Hero, because, again, Asus keeps, like, they literally have, like, one VRM design, and they barely change anything about it for the whole Z390 lineup, so... Which is, like, if you get a high-end board and the VRM is basically the same as a mid-range or low-end board, that's why I have a problem with the Z390s from Asus, but, anyway, so yeah, this evidently doesn't have enough I/O. Does the Ultra, like, there's got to be one that has as many USB ports as I want, right? There's a 3.0 and no other internal ones. You're kidding me, right? Yeah, damn, it really doesn't. Okay. Oops. Too many back buttons. So I guess we'll check the Z390 Master. That's a pretty expensive board, though, at this point. And I'm literally just like, I want two 3.0 internal headers. Like, is that really so hard? Does this have enough? There's one. There's not another one. Well, I gotta say, I'm really surprised. I was expecting to find at least one Z390 board with as many internal USB 3.0s as my X370 board. that's currently in my daily system. I did not think this would be an issue. So I guess let's see if AMD has any better options. Because I think they should. If, like, I have an X370 board that does this better. X470. Actually, there's even B450 boards that I think have more internal USB 3.0. Which, that's quite frankly just sad for Intel motherboards as far as I'm concerned. Actually, I don't like AM4 motherboards from Gigabyte. The ones they've had so far, like, they're really not that great. So we're going to go over to MSI land. Because for AM4, MSI is definitely still... now, for X570, that might change. But for AM4, X470, B450, MSI is definitely basically my go-to. So, let's see. X47... Nope. I wanted X470 and B450. And let's check this one. Because I have a sneaking suspicion this one kind of almost does everything. So let's check the gallery. Do motherboard manufacturers just hate internal USB 3.0 headers or something? Like, really? At least rear I/O is also not exactly incredible. Whoa. Okay, we're going to go to Gigabyte. Like, somebody's got to have a board where it's like, I can tolerate this, right? I did not know a Gaming X existed for B450. That must be new. 8+3. Really? 8+3. I am very suspicious. For like, cause there's a star next to that. Are you freaking kidding me? Did I not already complain about this once? Okay, so yeah, this is a 4-phase Gigabyte hybrid digital freaking. You know, I thought I told them about this. Like, no, you can't call it a bloody 8-phase if you're putting the chokes in freaking parallel. But, oh well. Yep. I mean, just can't win, apparently. Oh, there, see? 2 internal USB 3.0 headers. So, yeah. But that VRM is bad. That VRM is actually bad. So, probably might want a higher end Gigabyte AM4 board, or we could check out what ASRock has for AM4, because they might also be better equipped on the... Actually, ASRock's VRMs are even worse than Gigabyte's, so quite frankly, on ASRock's side, I would literally just check a Taichi and nothing else. Which admittedly, the Taichi is not the most expensive of the the AM4 boards, but rear I/O isn't exactly... It's enough. It's enough for me. So let's take a look at the front of the board. There's one USB 3.0. Really? Oh no, there's another one that's right angle. Yeah, they have one at a right angle. So yeah, this would also be viable, and I would potentially choose... Like, I'd rather have this than... Well, this. Right? Like, definitely would rather have that over this. I swear I already complained about this motherboard. Like, this exact board, I wrote, like... See, when I complained about this to MSI just removed any mention of how many phases they have on their motherboard, and I'm fine with that. Like, as long as you don't talk about... Like, as long as you don't lie about what's on there, I'm cool with it. But, yeah. Because the thing is, right, like, the problem I have with this right here, the A+3, because if you go down and you read about, like, there's that star thing, right? Oh, side note, 4+4. Like, most people don't know what that even means, because what that means is literally it's a freaking 4-phase. Oh, and I guess they're not mentioning how many phases there are. I guess they're doing the Asus thing where you say how many, but like this doesn't. You know what? No, like just because wait, no, it says phases right there. So that there is just like that's not okay. This is okay on the same level that Asus is number plus number thingy, and then no mention of what those numbers actually refer to. You know, that's on the same level as Asus right there. This right here is just straight up wrong, and that right there doesn't help the average consumer at all. So that's just, yeah, good job, Gigabyte. Good job. I mean, it's not like I didn't make a 30 plus minute rant video about this before. But yeah. Okay. So I guess what we're going to go look if MSI has anything more acceptable. This is a legitimately, like, I really like this board from a VRM standpoint. Oh, and it does have two USB 3.0s. So yeah, I guess I'd land with like this or the Tai Chi. I think this is cheaper than the Tai Chi, so I'd honestly go for this because this gets a really solid VRM. It's a 5-phase, not a 10-phase. It looks like a 10-phase, it's a 5. But it is still really solid. Like international rectifier voltage controller. You have load line calibration, switching frequency. Quite frankly, this would probably be good enough to run a 12-core Ryzen 3000 series CPU. And the only reason why I haven't already switched my daily system to this motherboard is because I like using this motherboard for testing. So I use it for memory testing, so I can't put it in my daily system because then I don't have a board to test memory on. Yeah, this is a solid board. And 3.0, 3.0, and, you know, stick a 2700X in it, and you have, in my opinion, a relatively high, like, up to, like, good enough for my standards kind of gaming build. I still can't believe that there's like no Z390 motherboards with dual internal USB 3.0. I maybe might have missed it. Maybe it's a right angle connector and I didn't notice it. But cuz that's like it's just a USB 3.0 port. Like why wouldn't there be more of them, right? Oh, ASRock's website be terrible. So that's kind of the norm. Z390. There we go. This came out that's new. VRM on this is halfway decent. It's not. It's a 8+2. Not exactly what I would go for with like a. Well, it's about on par with what you get on like a Maximus 11 Hero, and like it won't overheat. This actually has doublers in it, so this does actually have 8 phases, but it's again in like the same kind of power delivery capability, though the heat sinks on this look maybe a little bit more competent, but nothing incredible. Oh, there, 2 internal USB 3.0 headers. So yeah, I could totally go for something like this for Z390. What about the Gaming 6? Because obviously you want to go, oh, that also has 3.0 twice. Cool, nice. Z390. This board, I think the VRM is okay. This is not acceptable right here for a 9900K. I would not run this. For a 9600K, I would be okay with it. A mild overclock on a 9700K would probably be okay with this. Oh, still has 2 USB 3.0s. So yeah, I would tolerate this, but this is not what I would consider an optimal motherboard, right? Yeah, 3.0 there, 3.0 there. Good enough for me. So hopefully this is somewhat helpful with like the whole choosing a motherboard for your gaming system. Like the VRM, again, depending on what you're doing, right? If you're not super overclocking focused, the VRM is a secondary thing. It's just that if you're starting to buy motherboards that are pretty damn expensive, you know, I have minimum requirements for like at a certain price point, it just doesn't make sense to have a bad VRM in my opinion. I do not like the rear I/O on this, so actually I'd probably go for the Gaming 7 or the Gaming 6. The VRM on this is I think is pretty solid. It's not incredible, but how's the rear I/O? Not good enough for me, but you do get dual LAN, which for some people might be a bonus. For me, it's not like, I don't really care. So, SLI, no. Gaming 7. Oh no, this still keeps the like 5 useful USB ports on the rear. Damn it! I guess the extra 3.0 internal is like a restriction of the chipset. I guess I could just get like a USB 2.0 rear back of case card. But yeah, because you have extra USB 2.0 ports on the motherboard, so you could use those. But yeah, so you know, there's compromises to everything. I guess you can't have all the USB ports on the rear I/O if you also want them internally. But that's kind of that the adventures of Buildzoid, looking at a bunch of motherboards and not just focusing on the VRM. But hopefully this gives you some idea of what kind of criteria like you might have. And like again, depends what you're doing with your system. If you're just doing a normal gaming setup and you're not going to have, like, as I said, I have 2 webcams that go to the rear IO. So because I use them for live streaming and making videos and that kind of thing. So my ridiculous USB rear IO requirements are ridiculous because of what I do. If you're just a gamer, you're probably not going to have a bunch of USB stuff plugged into the back, or you can live with it being plugged into the front. But on the front, I have like a drawing tablet, USB sticks, a CD player, because I like to buy music on CDs still. You can get cheap CDs with music a lot of the time. So yeah, and then I have an SD card reader as well. So it's just like I'm a bit of a USB port hog, but if you just play games, then you have a keyboard and mouse, and that's basically it, and maybe like a USB microphone or something, right? And there are USB hubs that you can buy to like complement the USB ports on your motherboard, but it's like I'd prefer to just have more USB ports directly on the board instead of messing around with a hub, because I have enough of a mess of cables as it is already. So there's a lot of criteria to choosing a motherboard. It's not just about the VRM. The VRM's mostly like depending on how much you want to overclock, but a lot of the time, like the VRM is also one of the things that like you can't easily go on the motherboard manufacturer's website and just look at and go like, oh, this is good, this is bad, because quite frankly, I'm looking at this and I don't really like, if it weren't for the fact that actually, I don't actually know what's under these heat sinks. Like, I can look at this and I'm like, okay, well, I don't know how many phases that has. I don't know what MOSFETs it has. So I don't really know if that VRM is good or not at a glance. And that's why I try to cover that kind of thing in my videos, because that is something pretty important in my opinion. And then the memory overclocking is kind of the same situation, right? It's just like, you can't just look at a motherboard and go, oh, it's going to be good at memory overclocking. And ASRock, 4300 plus, that's not actually that generous a speed, but there's definitely motherboards out there where they're like, oh yeah, this will do 4800 megahertz, and then it's like, well, you need a top 1% CPU memory controller, or you need a top, and then you need a really top-end memory kit. And then there's certain memory kits don't actually work with this motherboard, not because they're rated too high speed, it's just that the motherboard isn't configured for the memory, because the memory sticks can have like there's standard DDR4 JEDEC memory stick layouts, and then there's like some of the manufacturers will actually tweak the layouts a little bit, not necessarily just to accommodate things like RGB, because say G-Skill's A2 PCB layout is generic A2 PCB with an RGB chip on it. But then if you look at like Corsair's RGB stuff, it's still technically an A2 layout, but it's tweaked just enough that like EVGA motherboards don't, like Z390 EVGA motherboards don't like it. But X299 EVGA motherboards are completely fine with it. So, yeah, it's just like, those are kind of the details that I would like to see motherboard reviews cover that you don't really see motherboard reviews cover a lot of the time. That's the kind of extra detail that I like to see in motherboard reviews. That's what I try to provide at a very, at a snail-like pace because of my my ability to produce content. But yeah, like, because a motherboard review that literally just lists off all of the basically copy pastes the specification page from the manufacturer is like not useful, guys. Like, seriously, not useful. Like, go through the BIOS, test out a bunch of different memory kits, say which memory kits work well, say which memory kits don't work well. Check maybe, like, if the VRM is especially low end, check the VRM thermals, maybe, like, overclocking experience. The thing is, a lot of the top end motherboards is just, you're not going to notice a difference in overclocking from the VRM, even if you're on Sub-Zero in a lot of cases. So, yeah, because, You know, because there's like again, it's like with the VRM, you basically reach a certain level of VRM build quality, and going past it doesn't really achieve anything. It just makes the board more expensive. Now, if you're buying a motherboard, like, and I'd say that's fine, right? It's kind of like when you have, sometimes you just want to have something ridiculous, right? Like, I have a Z77 motherboard from Gigabyte with a 32-phase V-Core VRM. Is it practical? No. Does it make the motherboard overclock the CPU better? No. Does it do anything but take up space around the CPU socket? No. But do I still want it? Yes. Right? Is it but for a normal consumer, it's just like, well, that's irrelevant. It's cool that it exists, but it's not, you know, not really all that useful. So that's kind of a lot of the things to consider with motherboards, and hopefully this was somehow helpful. And I see that now that this video is 40 minutes, but yeah, I don't know how else to cover it. Now, at the same time, and also with the VRM, at the same time, you can't just go ridiculously low end. Now, if you're running like an AMD APU, I'd say, you know, because that's the APUs are quad cores. They don't pull any CPU power. You can literally buy motherboards with 4-phase VRMs. You can buy garbage, and it'll still overclock fine because those CPUs pull so little power, right? And then, so it's like with the A cores, that it really starts mattering, because the 8-core pulls basically twice as much power as an APU, right? So you can't just like what's fine for the APU is not going to necessarily be fine for the 8-core. So yeah, you know, the motherboard VRM is just like, it needs to fit the power requirements of the CPU you intend to run. And maybe if you're not doing like super stressful things, like the thing is also about the super stressful things is like, if you're not doing like video editing or rendering or something like that, why do you have an 8-core CPU? Like, if you're only using 50% of the cores on your CPU, why do you have an 8-core, right? It's like, couldn't you have gone for a 6-core instead? You could have gone for like a 2600X, then gone for like a ridiculous cooling system to really try push the maximum of that 2600X, and you would have probably gotten the exact same gaming performance as with the 2700X. In fact, you could have maybe used the money saved to buy a better memory kit and a motherboard with more features, right? Like, you can kind of min-max your PC build for exactly what you need. So yeah, hopefully, you know, and with like the 6-core, you can go for a cheaper VRM and then more USB or whatever, right? You can make sacrifices elsewhere as well. And somebody might be like, oh, I'm buying the 8-core for future proofing, and then it's like, well, okay, do whatever, right? It's your system. You can use a 8-core to play Counter-Strike Go if that's what you feel like doing. But I'd argue if you're playing Counter-Strike, you can probably get away with like a 2400G and then try to just get as good memory on that as possible. And yes, you'll end up with a build where you're going to have more money, like your memory is potentially going to be more expensive than the CPU and motherboard combined, but it might actually, like, it would potentially give you better gaming performance because the game doesn't use more than like 3 cores or whatever, right? So, yeah, kind of consider what you're doing with the build. Yeah. Hopefully this was hopefully this video was helpful and not a complete waste of your 43 minutes of time. Kind of went off on a tangent looking for a motherboard with enough USB ports for me, but you know, still gives you an idea of what kind of you know, decisions you might have to make with your own motherboard selection. And yeah, hopefully this was helpful, and I guess thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe, leave any comments, questions, suggestions down in the comment section below. And if you'd like to support what I do here with actually hardcore overclocking, I have a Patreon, and I also have Teespring. Teespring, you can just buy AHOC like merch, shirts, posters, hoodies. There's hoodies now. Well, there's one hoodie, but yeah, there's also stickers. And then if you don't really want to buy anything, there's the Patreon, which helps fund, you know, the channel, like a lot of the hardware purchases, and that kind of thing. So yeah, that's it for the video. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.